We have a big group today. Thank you for coming. Person coming in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who have not been to one of our Zoom events before, my name is Caitlin Shea, and I'm the Events and Media Director for Walt Whitman Birthplace. The Birthplace is a museum that is located in Huntington, New York. If you're able to, definitely try to plan a visit. I think we're all ready to get out of the house and be doing more things. And we're going to continue these Zoom events even after the quarantine. We've been talking about it, and it's just, we're getting such a great response. So thank you for that. Thank you to those of you who've been sharing our events a lot. It makes a huge difference. This week was Giving Tuesday, this Tuesday, and that's a day of global charity. And we received donations, and we appreciate it so much. Every little bit helps us move forward to have these events. But at the same time, I was thinking another way of supporting us is doing exactly what you're doing right now, which is coming to our events, showing us and showing, you know, the people that we get grants from, that this is the kind of events that people want to be a part of, that people want to see more of. So that means so much to us. So thank you for that, absolutely. And the other thing I was thinking about was, there's this quote by John Cage, who was an experimental musician, and he had these students, and he made a list of rules for them. And one of them was always be around. So what he meant by that basically is, it's always participate in events that you think are meaningful and show them support, but also as artists or poets or any sort of networking position that you might have, it's just such a great way of, you know, being in people's minds, let them think of you first for an opportunity, which brings me to Terri, because I had the great experience of seeing Terri perform. And it was sort of this kismet thing where Susan Dingle, who is actually here tonight, I just saw her name before, she's another amazing poet. She and I did a project out in Riverhead at East End Arts, and she invited me to Long Island Writers House. If you're not familiar with it, definitely add them on Facebook, like their page. Long Island Writers House had a lot of great events, and they're always updating with more that's going on. But so she invited me very last minute. If you don't know, Riverhead is an hour away. Long Island Writers House is in Huntington. And so I said, okay, I've never been to a poetry reading at that point in my life. So I said, sure, I'll give it a try. And I had this amazing experience of seeing Terri, Maggie Bloomfield, and Susan perform. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you just put yourself out there, you can find yourself in these amazing places. And I got to sit on a couch and watch Terri, right? And Karen Levine, that's the person who started Long Island Writers House, right in her living room. So always be around, always be looking for things that interest you, get more involved. And that's exactly what you're doing tonight. So thank you so much. And I'm going to introduce Terri now. Terri, thank you so much for doing this for us. You're amazing. And, you know, Terry's volunteering her time with us tonight, and we just feel so lucky to have her. And I'm happy to share her as well. You can write from your living room, same type of experience as I had. All right, so Terri, I'm going to give you the spotlight now.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to see you all. Your faces make me so happy. I miss you all in person. I miss your hugs. I miss holding space in rooms with you, but seeing you this way is the next best thing. I want to thank Caitlin for doing this, for having these. And I want to ask you all, if you have the means, not everybody does in this economic climate, but if you have the means, to just think about this as a suggested donation of $5 each, at least at the minimum, to the Walt Whitman Birthplace. It's an amazing place. We need to keep places like this that house the arts alive after this quarantining time. So I'm going to ask you all to please, before you leave tonight, to take the link on the side, on the chat side, and just $5. It's enough. It's what you would spend at Starbucks, or much less than you'd spend on a movie, for the Birthplace and for what they do for artists. So tonight I'm going to be reading from God's Spine, my second collection. This book has taken me 5 years to put together, and I love this cover. Is this gorgeous? I had nothing to do with this cover, but it's gorgeous. And it really reflects the work. My first book is called Overexposed, and it was a book about recovery from childhood sexual abuse and recovery from substances as a way of coping. And God's Spine is kind of a spiritual chiropractic towards how to find beauty and joy in life and in living after trauma. So hopefully this, you can hear that in the work tonight. I'm gonna take you through the hardest parts to hear first, so we can end with some fun stuff. We are gonna talk about trauma tonight, so take care of yourself. I don't give trigger warnings before each poem, because sometimes we need to hear things, but if you need to leave to take care of yourself, just do that. So I'm gonna start with some heavy-hitting, hard stuff, and I promise to end with some fun, love, and sex poems, okay? So you get to hear sex at the end. Reclaiming sex as a survivor is a very powerful thing. So the first poem is going to be called When My Rapist Tried to Friend Me on Facebook. And it's told in two voices. So if you could see it on the page, you'd see it's told in two voices. So I'm going to try to delineate those voices in the way I read it. It's not as though I had forgotten he was out there somewhere. Creak in floorboard, toe to stone floor, entryway to guest bedroom. Social media has a place, pause, sharp intake, dripping sink. But profile to profile with him, I paused, pounce, lion on jackal, on me, he turned head, naked, legs pinned. I thought, well, how should I respond? Carry ladders in pockets, form stones around ankles, drowning, inconceivable how far a shoulder can rotate. After his request, be quiet, void it, blinds down, brain blown out, electric impulses, a body's betrayal, begin, beg, please, let me keep my socks on. My first impulse, why don't you, bubbling up whole above, scream, you, the right scream to do is why, was to shut down my account and run to where a memory can't find you. Raw, all calling another ruin, smearing fish scales at thighs, balcony of bees, who is bleeding leg, who crumpled sheets, who hand this. It was like an out of sedimentation, the fact of choices, supermarkets in their natural habitat of panic, dog-chewed rubber couch, the flip-flop, 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 dead fish, beach ride back, sand in suit, bottom, itch, burn, burning, need to wash, to wash, to wash. It was an out-of-body experience. I held my breath, felt paralyzed. Whiskery dot, popping zits on his forehead in my mind, you could at least act like you like it. He acted like it had been a date. Focus, laser of broad sunspot, neck, forearm, eyes, lid, inside lid, looking inside, you practically begged me in. I couldn't help but look at his request because, I mean, it's weird to think a person, non-being, non-form me, cold weight, propane tank, dumb, a person could go on existing when you've working over body fragment, still white ass pumping, not, had worked so hard to make him stop existing, non-arm, non-thought, you buried dead limbs. In my brain, I had thought I had made him disappear. Thank you. So, thank you. I can see you're clapping. Yay. So this is a piece called Affidavit. And it's kind of written like just the facts, ma'am, which I think a lot of survivors do. They distill things down to the sharpest, clearest moments or memories they can. My mother said, "Pack your bags. Your father doesn't want us here anymore." He had beat my brother. I was the mistress. We boxed what we could, the summer and the wet heat. My brother cried. My hands, how little they could carry. The callus on my pointer finger, it could peel and be soft again. My brother's bruises. Father was driving. He didn't stop when he pushed Chris from the car. I ran to him. How soft my belly was after sleep. When my father touched me, I flinched. I didn't, but I wanted to learn how. Later, I was raped. I didn't scream. My brother stopped talking and no one knew why. When I cut into my skin, no one asked. I dyed my hair. I was raped on the dorm floor, on the uptown subway platform. The wind rushed, knocked breath into me. I had stopped breathing. I kept breathing when I wanted to stop. I screamed at my mother at the top of the stairs. She had wanted to know where I had been. She had wanted to know. When I was 3, she held my head in the crook of her arm while reading to me. She was warm and soft and felt like bread dough. My father said she was a failure and he was my parachute. I drifted from her. She had held me. She let go. He pushed me naked from his lap. I ran as far as possible. I kissed a beautiful girl. I wanted to be a man. She invited me into her mouth. Her tongue gave soft passage. At home, the back scratcher was a stick, a whip. It was, "You will listen to me." It left proof that I existed. I never existed. I let him push me down. Father, the student on the dorm, the man in the subway platform, the beautiful girl said, "No, there, to stay, you must kneel," and I did. She pushed me down. I held her to my chest filled with birds. She left, returned to an ex-girlfriend. I threw a glass against the wall. It all shattered. My brother was rocking. We were packing up, moving out. Someone was singing. I didn't die. I died slowly. I locked the door until every voice was silent. Thank you. So my first book, I wrote a lot about my dad, and as is the way in therapy, when you concentrate on one parent a long time, and then all of a sudden your therapist is like, "What about your mom?" So this is about that. When the words don't come. My mother sits on the floor of our yellowing bathroom, wallpaper peeled to reveal crusted paste and trapped gnats. She grips a gun. No. It is a Smith & Wesson 9mm semi-automatic, my father's department-issued handgun, the one I fired at 5. Before I held myself up on two-wheeled bike, I held the power of this 11-pound piece of cold black machinery. 2 little hands aiming at the circle bullseye of an androgynous figure at the end of a gravel driveway. I stand at the other side of a carpeted strip, my mother caressing the gun like a baby as she rocks and cries and sings, "Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes." Slow and out of tune, like a deflated tire losing air, and she turns to me and smiles. And my brother behind me screams in slow motion with the sound turned down. And I see all the words I wish to say in front of me, like they are illuminated on a big screen. And we all fall. We all fall. So this next poem is an emulation of alternate names for Black boys, which is a poem you should definitely read. And I'm looking for who wrote it because my brain is blanking right now. Somebody put it in the comments. Matt, put it in the comments. So it's an emulation of alternate names for Black boys, and I changed it to alternate names for rape survivors. Thank you, Matt. Number 1, held breath in the half light of red-eyed dawn. Number 2, muscle tension before the brick is thrown. Number 3, forgotten bodies piled on a dorm room floor. Number 4, someone's daughter. Number 5, shade from a leaf gone once the sun moves in the sky. 6, life destroyer of the hometown football star. 7, huddled masses yearning to breathe, breathe, breathe. Number 8, twisted knot, a hive of cuts on thighs. Number 9, disembodied soul and the cat's 10th life. Number 10, your teacher, bus driver, dental hygienist, the girl who sits stone-faced at church. 11, me. 12, every third woman reading this. 13, a reinvention of a reinvention. 14, the millisecond before the razor or the noose. So this next piece, it's a piece that takes a bunch of reoccurring themes. So you're going to hear a bunch of reoccurring themes. They come back and they kind of interplay with each other. So it's kind of a prose poem with interlaying ideas in it, and it's called I'm the Type to Talk with My Hands. In 1975, my father sits on the fraying brown couch, counting out dimes on the table in front of him. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night and I wonder whose house I am in. From across the street, a Black girl with a red bandana says to my only friend, "Why are you playing with that white girl?" In 1976, stacks of magazines collect on our porch. My mother promises they will be worth something someday. In 1979, a neighbor tells me all ladies have fine, delicate collarbones and wrists. I have a crush on the Jamaican boy across the street, and my father slaps me, says it was a mistake moving into this Black neighborhood. Often at school, I can see myself from above, and my body feels like a country I am visiting. In 1981, I cut my inner thigh with a razor, and the red blood streams out like a billowing bandana. Hundreds of pieces of cut magazines litter the floor of my bedroom as I collage the wall with pictures of models' collarbones and wrists. After I get my first period, my mother buys me sanitary napkins. Tampons, she says, are for people who've already had sex. In 1978, I do as I am told, and I save all my coins in a bank for college. Blood rushes down my leg in math class, and a boy points at me like I'm a disease. In college, I learned that race is a social construction, and those words replay over an image of my father shouting the N-word at our neighbors. After my father enters my room at night to touch the insides of my thighs, he leaves a shiny dime to remind me he was there. When I look at my mother, her face is a rearview mirror, and I can only see what is behind me. I am the only person in my family to go to college. I am 10 when my father tells me men want a whore in bed and a lady all the other times. I am holding my first boyfriend's hand. 2 boys throw a bottle at us and yell, "Jungle fever." He immediately lets go and says, "No white girl is gonna get me killed." I eat less and less food in order to feel more and more of my bones. When I am 11, my aunt gives me a lacy teddy. She says, you may as well dress like a whore if you're going to act like one. In 1979, the only safe place left is a small card table across the street, eating Jamaican food with Mr. and Mrs. Christie. My house is filled with useless items my mother is desperate to find uses for. A girl in school says, you can't trust somebody who talks with their hands. Thanks. So the book is broken into 4 sections, and the first section is entitled Blood. And the second section, which I'm venturing into now, there are fewer in this section, but this is the Gray Matter section. And this is a poem called Right to Save Someone. This is one of those poems that I didn't think anything of. I actually thought it wasn't very good. And I wanted this other poem to be taken by a journal that I had purposely wanted. I specifically picked this one poem for this one journal, but they wanted 3 submissions. So I just threw this in there. And of course, this is the one they took. They didn't take the other one. So I thought, well, maybe there's something to this poem. So Right to Save Someone. Say something about the blade, the shine under the opalescent moon. How when you moved it like a pendulum in your fingers, it caught fire, sent pearls of light to dance on the ceiling above you. Say something about how it mesmerized you for a second and made you forget your plan. Say something about having a plan. Say something about how you cried and felt nothing, your breath, how it stilled in your throat, how you breathed like a master yogi. Say something about irony. Talk about the razor between your 2 still fingers, held like a lover's eyelash to blow away for a wish. Say how you took it at first and moved it above your wrist, sawing the air for practice. Say how you let it kiss your skin, how you let it whisper a salted ocean breeze, how you began the dance of trajectory through a vein you didn't know had so much ocean inside. Tell how you began a creator to birth the wet, sticky foal that is your heart. So, slight pause for you. You're all gorgeous. Hello, gorgeous. All right. So back to Dad. He's always fun. I'm going to read all these comments at some point. I can't read and read, but I will. I love you all. This is called Chopping Wood. Father, I had never seen you cry before. The day you knelt by our wood pile, splintering roots beneath your 6'4" frame, a river of surrender. Your backhand had struck me so swiftly, I felt my teeth convert to powder. A scholar of angles, I knew every translation of your body's vocabulary, could tell before the crack what was coming. And after, how you'd want to boomerang it back. My eyes held back more than sky. You forced my forehead into the center of your sternum, seeking repair, but I had seen it was possible to break you. Your shoulders fell like quotation marks, as if you'd suddenly felt every blow of your metal against strings of my 11-year-old body. After you continued the work of halving and halving again, you stood imagining my head as a log, a melon, split beneath descending arms, your rhythmic chopping, kindling flying across the yard, and me gathering armfuls of fallen wood. So being a survivor and reading the news is not fun, I'll tell you that. And so this is a poem that I wrote when Brett Kavanaugh was going through his confirmation hearings. That's always fun. That's when you tell yourself to disconnect from social media for a while. So this is called Poem Written While Listening to Brett Kavanaugh. Looking back, it felt brave to have touched any man, like beating a train across the rails. He told me I was off mine, conjured the words testimony, veracity, and sides. All the pouring days made us hostages, the animals boys become. My blood drying in the banks of bent grass, their tips, pins inside pores, blades a stray cat's mouth, the silent river and ghosts, disturbed fever sleep. My dreams are green branches for whipping, an exorcism of cells. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I only have 4 more, and then I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your questions and stuff. We could talk about stuff. The next section is called Sacrum, and this is a poem called This Is Not. A poem. This is my heartbeat, a postcard, wet kiss, the stroke you don't know you're having. This is incandescent architecture, a box of blocks, bereavement on a Saturday in September. Please don't read this like a poem. Don't put this in a library or a pocket. This is more than something sent in for submission, more than instincts, bebop, or joystick honey, more than the absurd seriousness of German galoshes. This blue tip of compass needle stills as I near home. So this next poem that I'm about to read is a poem that took me 20 years to write. I'm taking a page out of Phil Asaf's book. It's going to take me 20 years to get this poem. So I had a really dear friend that I've been wanting to kind of write an elegy poem for a very long time, and I just couldn't find the entryway in. And then it just came to me one day, and here it is. Here's the product. It's called There Is a Light and It Never Goes Out. And if you're a Smiths fan, you understand that reference. So any Smiths fans in the house from the 80s? Okay. There is a light and it never goes out. One morning it happens. A riot of forsythias bell the air, and daffodils sing out their lusty throats. Winter opens her dark curtain to spring, and without warning or desire, I remember you. Flowers in your ripped jean pockets, that spaced out smile of the newly high, how I followed you through sterile high school hallways of prom posters and sweat glands. You were a constellation I charted from my simple post back on Earth. Being gay didn't stop you from kissing me in the back of a cab saying, "You're the only girl I could ever love." You taught me how to take the longest drag off thickly rolled joints so I wouldn't cough and gasp for air. When I spun faster and further out of orbit, you put your nose to the bone of my cheek and said over and over again on the purple velvet couch, "You are here and beautifully alive." It was always you who reeled me back in when I floated beyond where astronauts know is safe. And damn it, I was supposed to die first, wasn't I? It was what all of our friends meant when they changed the lyrics of Girlfriend in a Coma to Terri in a Trauma, and laughed sarcastically, casually, taking tabs of E or bumps of K under the canopy of Rave Club Stratosphere. They knew I was our group's biggest disaster. But you, my beautiful mischief maker with your daffodils, Smith's shirt, and smile of galactic dreams, you were to be the Keith Richards to my Kurt Cobain. I was ready to hit the atmosphere hard and fast and let it all go to yellow stardust while you swaggered, triceps pushing t-shirt small, veins snaking down years before the needles, spoons, and viruses lay waste to the blades of your perfect cheekbones. I remember the mission we set on together to float far above the comet I could no longer chase. This morning, you return, beckoning me to follow you one last time to the end of 10th Avenue, where Junior Vasquez will trance us with a playlist under a ceiling made of stars. Oof, that one gets me every time. All right. So thank you. All right. So the next ones are, I'm going to do a sex poem. So whatever, hope you're ready. And I think you deserved it after all the trauma poems. So I'm going to do a sex poem, and hope that's not awkward for you, Matt. And then I'll read a love poem about you, Matt. All right. This poem is called Charting the Course of More. You hover, a hummingbird near a blossom. I am so slick, oh. Your hot angels measure my scent, citrus peelings wafting through doorways, scent-limbed azaleas opening, my head a Dixie cup pulled through, plastic dispenser by your sugared tug. I unzip every hurried hunting, pour myself into a cold steel glass. As you work on me, suck erect blood, each follicle unglued. I am unfinished, finishing, oh, finish me. Whirling into square dance of tongue, yours, an ocean of sky falling into the O of eyes wide now. Your hands cradle my pelvis, bring me to the table of your waiting mouth, rushing water towards an opening, the force of it, rushing the canyon floor into God, as moans cascade down spine, twist into the throne of more, yes. More. Yes, I need opening past reason, out past the burning of the desert, into a place of no returning. Clamped hands, clasped lips, arms above my head, ribbons around the maypole. The wide girth of your hand pushes my face down the vacant lot of my mind, pushing until yes, the birth of yes, still more yes. Fingers lost inside each inhale. Yes, our hungry bed. You devour me here in two parts, now whole. Take a moment. I'll take a sip. Okay. So my last poem, is a love poem, and it's an odd love poem because it's a love poem about imagining that the person that you love is dead, because I think when you love someone so much, it's the not being able to imagine that they couldn't exist, that they somehow not be there, that is crazy making. So this last poem is, I admit that while you're gone, from the house or sleeping, I picture you dead, pulled clean from the seam of our linen lives of moons and tulips, into the tender groves of a distant, greedy night. Each time you disappear into the most unreachable stillness I can imagine. My heart, a bug-eyed chimney of belching smoke, lurches along the violent sea of 5 o'clock rush hour. Without you, souls wail. A tempest of arms strangles necks inside the yellow geography of shifting metric love. Your voice, so urgent, seizes me. The melody of your strange fingers. The clock strikes 11. My spine twitches. A finch released from a branch of snow. Your head in my hands. The sleeping of the waiting world. There can be nothing but this. Yay, that's it. I'm done. Here's the book. This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Encore.
Well, maybe at the end, I want to make sure I hear questions from you. I love you all. Yay, look at all of your comments. I guess so. I'm going to cry because I miss you all so much. And the Zoom thing isn't like, it isn't the same as holding space in a room with you, but it's so beautiful. I'm going to cry. So thank you all for being here tonight. I really, really love you all. And thank you to Caitlin for putting this together and all of your hard work into the birthplace, which you're all going to donate to because it's $5. And if you don't have $5, I totally get that. But if you do, please give it to the Whitman because they deserve it.
Thank you so much, Terri. You're amazing. You brought us all over. Despair to beauty and hope. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Let's do our Q&A first, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you about upcoming events. But I will say that Matt Tasca is next week, same time, same place, Thursday at 6:30. You don't want to miss that. And then there's a family event with Rainer and Atticus as well the following week, Thursday, 6:30. Easy to remember.
You're going to get sick of us.
No, definitely not. And they've been doing a quarantine video pretty much every week, right? I see it
every Sunday at 2.
Every Sunday at 2. And then they have them recorded on there too. So if you miss it, you can still see it. And then of course we record all of these events and we share them on YouTube. So if you miss any of these, you can always catch up. But of course it's better to be there when it's live so that you can have questions and comments, which we can do now. Feel free to unmute yourself for this part. And if your mic is making a weird noise, then I will fix it. I'll just mute you. All right. So go ahead. And then you can also type in the comments now. Terri and I are relaxed enough.
How do I see everybody so I don't have to just see me? Here, let me figure this out. Oh, that's so much better. Okay.
Go to gallery, switch to gallery view.
I got it. Yes, thank you. I'm figuring out Zoom as I go. I'm old, you know. I'm old, y'all.
Oh.
Anyone have any questions for me about how the book came to be or how I came to be okay enough to write a book or anything in between?
We'll need a deep breath for a second, I think.
No, it's okay. Can I say that if you want a copy of it, I have a lot of stamps and a lot of mailers. And I put it in the mail, media mail, so by the time it gets to you, all the Rona is off of it, if there was ever any. And if you want one, just you could Venmo me. My Venmo's in the comments. And I'd be happy to work out how to mail it to you, so.
There's a question from Julianne in the comments.
Oh, okay, let me read it. I'd like to hear you talk about why you titled the sections in the book the way you did. Okay, I would like to say that I could make real clear sense of why their names what they are, but they just seem to fit. So the sections are This Blood, Gray Matter, Sacrum, and then there's the epilogue, which is only one poem about my relationship to a higher power and how it's changed over time. And so the book is a spiritual chiropractic, how to get better or how to kind of put yourself in spiritual alignment after trauma. So we start with the blood of it, like the visceral body of it. And then we go into the brain's thought process of it. And then we go into the sacral arena of finding beauty and passion and in sex, in the body, in nature that can bring us back to ourselves after trauma. And then the epilogue is how I came to find my way back to a higher being, how I kind of thought of God as when I'm young, I think of God as this Santa Claus, making a list of who's naughty and nice. Metaphorically, the poem is much more detailed than this. And then it kind of goes through finding no kind of spiritualness and then finding a way back into a higher power. So the book kind of takes you from trauma and the blood of it, the guts of it, the gore of it, to hopefully up the chakral plane to the most spiritual part of your chakral experience. So hope that answered that.
All right, Maggie Bloomfield, who I've mentioned earlier, you have a question?
Yeah, well, I'm lucky enough to actually have the book. So I was able to follow along, and it's so gorgeous. I mean, I can understand why it took a long, particularly because you have the busiest family on the planet, why it took 5 years to write it. But it's kind of a masterwork, and I'm sure we all look forward to reading. I look forward to reading it again, and other people must read it. I did have a question. It's actually not about your poetry, which is, as far as I'm concerned, perfect. I have a question about the cover. Like, how did you find this cover? It's so beautiful.
So that's a great question. So a lot of poets nowadays are hiring people to find artwork for their covers, and I did that. My friend Veronica Golos, who's a brilliant poet of her own, and I think you need a poet to understand how to find the right cover for poetry. So she, as a side gig, she's an editor and a poet of esteem. She's she won the New Mexico Book Award a few years back, and she's a dear friend. I've known her for like 25 years. She also, I paid her some money to go looking for artwork. And what she did is she knew the poems really well. And so she found artwork in the world that she thought would fit it. And she gave me a file, like a document of like 30 pieces. This artwork without the words on it, without the layout, came to me in the first, it was a series of like 6 emails. It was the first thing in the first thing. And it was like a wedding dress, where you like try on the wedding dress first that you love, and you're like, really should try on all the other ones, but like you can't get that first one out of your mind. I had seen this and I was like, oh my God, after everything else, nothing else looked as good. So it's an Italian artist. So we had to write him in Italy and ask him for the rights to it. It took a while to find him. It took a while to get him to respond to us. There was language barriers and a whole host of things. Finally, he got back to my publisher and said we could have the rights to use the artwork. And then from there, Three Towers Press, my publisher, they're amazing. Their graphic designer is incredible, and I love what she did with the work, this kind of the words going down into the spine of the person, and the way it's kind of being downloaded into the universe and how it kind of relates to the chakral kind of nature of it and the spine of the book. And so that's kind of how it all came together. I'm just really, Monica found this piece, so, and that we got the rights to it. My internet is unstable. Can you all still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So somebody asked me, was my dad a policeman? Yes. Do you need me to elaborate on that? I do have, no offense to any police officers in the group, I do have a kind of a phobic reaction to police officers. My dad was a cop. I saw a lot of racism, violence, use of power, and an immunity to being in trouble. So, yeah. What other questions do we have in here that anybody asked me that I didn't get to? Anybody else have one?
Victoria has another question.
Victoria, yeah. Oh, you have to unmute her. Unmute Tori.
Well, she asked it in the comments.
Oh, okay. I gotta scroll back. I'm so bad at this. I'm old. Come on now.
Wanted to publish your book. How did you choose them as a fit for your work?
Well, this is an interesting story. So I had been sending my manuscript out to a whole host of places. It's very hard to find a publisher who will publish your work. I got a lot of rejections. Three Towers is an amazing publisher. I didn't even think of sending my work to them because they're so, for me, they were like so good. And they had published Veronica, who I love, and a bunch of other writers that I really respect. My husband took it upon himself to write an email to the person who is the publisher at Three Towers, and wrote and said, my wife's work is amazing, and I really think you should look at her manuscript. And I know I'm biased because I'm her husband, but I really think it would be a good fit for you. And the publisher wrote Matt back, absolutely, we'd be willing to. This is an incredible email from a loving husband. Please have her send it. And so I sent it to them. And at first she had some suggestions for me. She didn't like the way the book was ordered. She wanted the order to be different. She said, if you could order it in a way that makes more sense to the reader, I'd be willing to publish it. And I did that. I gave it to her and she published it. What I love about Three Taos is a few things. One, all of their covers are gorgeous. They're really committed to making gorgeous artwork happen on the front cover. They publish some really amazing names in public poetry, and they submitted it to a lot of contests. They submitted it for people to review. I have somebody who wrote a review on the book. It's coming out soon, and they really do really well by their authors. So that's why I like them. Does Walt Whitman have a Venmo? Do you know if they have a Venmo?
But you're convincing us
Caitlin?
we should.
What'd you say?
We don't, but I'm starting to think maybe we should. You're teaching
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, I think that would be good for you to do that. So, because I think
The
people would love
Venmo.
to just Venmo you the money.
Oh,
If you Venmo it to me, I can promise to keep a tally and then either send it to the Whitman via their link or send them a check. I'm happy to do that if you trust me enough to do that. If
Definitely
you
do.
really want to go through Venmo, you could do it. And if you want my book anyway, you could Venmo me money for my book and a little $5 extra for the Whitman. And then look at that.
PayPal.
Thank you, Terry. Awesome.
What about
Who
PayPal?
has it? What do
Yeah.
you want that?
PayPal.
PayPal?
Aaron has a question.
Okay. Is it in the comments, Matt?
Yes.
Let me look at it. Can you read it for me? Because that's hard for me to find it.
Yes.
Okay.
It says,
Oh, there it
It
is. You tap into your experiences with trauma so well. Is it cathartic or does it in some cases re-traumatize you? I know it is cathartic for me as a trauma survivor. Okay. So I would say that when I first, I'm not new to the trauma scene. I have over 20 years of therapy and over 25 years of sobriety. And, I think I wouldn't go this deep and have been able to write the level of stuff that I'm writing now if I hadn't had all that stuff to be able to do it, to write it. 90% of the time what I write is very cathartic for me. It's very rare at this point in my recovery that writing about it is re-traumatizing. I will say that sometimes what happens is you write about something you didn't even remember until you wrote it, or you write about something that you didn't realize the connection with something else until you wrote it. And then that takes you into a deeper dive of looking into things again. So does it make you do more therapeutic work on yourself? Does it make you have to work again a little bit harder? Sometimes. But I think a lot of times now what I'm doing is finding a way to bring words to an experience that for so long had no language. Now that I've done enough healing, I can find language for experiences that before were trapped in kind of the non-language part of my brain. And now I'm getting language for those things. So it's more cathartic than not. That's a great question. Thank you, Aaron. And I love you. What else? Any other questions in there that I've missed? Let me see, 5, 6 new. Okay. Any other questions? Is my dad still alive? No. Matt and I bonded on one of our first or second dates over the experience of a very rare experience that very few people have of being grateful that their father had passed away. So both he and I had lost our dads early, young. Matt was like 15 and I was 24. And both of those things helped us go into therapy or get our lives on track or be able to look at things that we wouldn't normally have looked at. So it was like a freedom in the fact that they had died. And I know that sounds maybe that sounds awful, but there's something really beautiful about bonding with somebody who gets it, that you're like, you're gone. Yeah. Can I buy the book in advance and then wait until I get it in person? It's too much of an, yeah, you can wait. I don't mind you waiting. Who knows when this will be over, but if you want to wait, I support you waiting. Okay, I don't know how to use this thing. Okay, considering your busy life, did you fit in writing time for the book? That's why it took 5 years. In Fits and Starts, I think I led a writing workshop for a while that helps us generate some work because we led the writing workshop. We had time for generative writing for ourselves. Matt is also a really supportive husband, and we kind of trade time when we're writing. Like, he's in a generative stage right now. I'm in a like selling my book stage. So I help him find time for writing while I take care of other things. So I think we just swap the baton. Having a really good relationship with someone helps. And then stolen moments. Sometimes my prep at work was used for a poem or the skeleton of a poem, you know? I think if you wait for a huge block of time, you'll never write. So I think even if you get 10 minutes to write, that's fine. Then you can come back to it, but write whenever you can. How I could reclaim sex? Was it the toughest? Yeah, that's definitely the final frontier. And I think, one, you have to have a really supportive, loving partner that you trust. Without trust, there is no good sex. Sorry. I mean, maybe for you there is, but not for me. And I think that once you can really fully believe you can trust another human being, fully, that is so healing. So you do a lot of work on yourself. You can't come broken. You got to come really having done all your own work. And then you have to have a partner who is eminently trustable, who is fully partnered in the relationship, and who gets your boundaries, knows your boundaries, all of that. So, yeah. Did you write before your father passed? I would say that I didn't remember a lot of the things that happened to me. I remembered the physical abuse. I remembered the verbal abuse. I remembered a lot of like inappropriate commentary and conversations before he passed. But I only got sober after my dad was already gone for 2 years. So sobriety was a gift of remembering, which was also kind of a curse, right? So you remember things more, which you're like, shit, I got sober for this. I could remember all this shit. But you can't keep using and dull all those things and get healthy. So my dad died, sobriety happened, and all these flood of memories came to the surface with sobriety and therapy. And so then you could start to unpack that stuff. I mean, I wrote poems before my dad passed, but not anything like this. How do you find poetry? How did it find you? Ooh, that's a good question. I'm an actor first and foremost, so poetry was never my first thing. I journaled and stuff in high school. I wrote really crappy love poems and like goth poems about like how shitty my life was as a teenager, but they weren't good. I didn't really share them with anybody. And then I did a lot of acting, and then at a certain point, I was trying to so 2 things were happening at the same time. I wanted work as an actor that fed me, and I felt like I should write a one-person show so I could write a vehicle for myself. And during the same time, I was in a writing workshop that was kind of therapeutic and helping me while I was in therapy. And I was generating a lot of material about my life. And I kind of did some prose poetry, monologuing writing first that I used on the stage that became my one-woman show. And then after that, I started like chiseling into the work through writing workshops, and found poetry as a really perfect medium for writing about trauma, because in trauma, you can't really write everything linearly or directly the way you can in prose. You can kind of come at it metaphorically, which works for trauma. So that helped me a lot. So that's how I found poetry. Do you write your poems you read on the page by your reader, or more to be performed by you at public readings, or do you balance that within a collection? It's a balance. I would say that there's nothing in this that I don't want people to read on the page, because if it's just a spoken word piece and it doesn't work on the page, I wouldn't put it in a book. And there's a bunch of poems that were cut from this. Actually, when I gave the manuscript to the publisher, she was like, I don't think this poem works on the page. And, you know, it's one of those kill your children thing where you have to let it go. So everything in this has to work on the page. But like that first poem, I think it works better for me on the page because you can see those two interlying dialogues. But when I'm standing in a space, I can really read it like an actor, so it can work that way. I think anything that goes in a book should definitely work on the page first. And then if it works read, that's great. And not everything needs to go in a book. So, yeah. What was your original organization of poems? What theme did you convalesce the sections around of why? So I had talked about the theme before about kind of the blood of trauma, the brains of it, and the spiritual part of it. I kind of had no sections. I kind of put them, I just put the poems on the floor and I put them as the way I felt like they dialogued with each other, but I don't think they worked as a cohesive story that way. And I was afraid to start the book with the most heavy-hitting poem, which is when my rapist tried to friend me on Facebook, which is the true story. And but I was like, oh God, do I really want to hit them in the face with the word rape on the first page? And Matt and a bunch of other people said, yes, you should. And my publisher really liked that. So we only have like a few more minutes because it's like an hour. So we could just say goodbye, or I could read you one more. What would you like, y'all? Just one more?
Oh, one more, Terri.
Okay.
You don't have to ask.
One more, but you have to promise you're going to make a donation to the Whitman tonight because they do such good work. And Caitlin, she is an employee there, and you know, you're sustaining her, you're sustaining the Whitman, you're sustaining other poets and poetry events. We need that. So we need the arts now more than ever. So I'm going to read another love poem or how about I read the epilogue of the book about my relationship with a higher power, so we can end with that. And it's called And the Word Was. Number 1, light shimmering between curtains, mother's sweat, my 2-year-old's tongue. 2, a single note and the symphony, swell of treble into bronze wings, the lost sun-streaked hour, staccato punched sky when I am 5. 3, smoke and no name, smeared pencil on graphed paper, mouth strung with gray pearls, bulging pockets, secrets, dry taste of letterless envelope on Sweet 16. 4, unzipped carbon nanotubes, the union of atoms, the space after exhale, light particles and wave in ordered chaos of the universe by age 31. 5, now God, you are waves beating tilde of sand, gold tenderness, horizon unfolding past sight, dancing on outstretched fingers. Thanks so much. I love you all so much. I really, really love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I hope next week you'll be here with Matt Pasca, who's a tremendous writer and human being. And thank you, Caitlin. Thank you.
So much, Terri. Oh my gosh. Beautiful. Let's all unmute ourselves now. I'll help. I can unmute. Let's give a big round of applause for Terri.
Beautiful. I need your sass.
Beautiful,
Hey.
Terri.
Thank
Love
you.
you all. Thank you for being here.
A hug.
Thank you.
A hug.
Thank you, Terri, as
Bye.
always.
All
So where's the
right.
link where you're supposed to
Not
contribute?
sure how to end it.
Bye.
All right. Oh, wait. Let me unmute Terri.
I want to read all these before I go.
Yeah, take your time. I'm going to leave it open for a little bit.
If you don't mind, just so I
I'm going
can
to post it again.
read
actually,
them all.
our links, because we got so many great comments, they keep moving.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
I'm leaving.
All right. So, as you know, Matt Pasca next week, same time, same place. Another thing that I keep wanting to announce, and I just am finally getting to it now, is we're looking for people who want to do poetry open mics. So if that interests you, please email me. My email is events, plural, at waltwhitman.org, and you can sign up and we'll give you a date. We're doing 5 poets per night, and we're going to have musical guests as well. Maggie Bloomfield is actually signed up already. And we're going to have the open mics that are planned for the moment are June 12th and June 26th, 6:30 p.m. I'm going to throw a lot of dates at you, but you'll see in that posting there's a link and it will have everything on it. Much easier than me telling you things, you have to write it all down. The other thing I want to tell you is all of our videos go up on YouTube. I know for me, sometimes just hearing it for the first time, I want to take it in again later. So you can always do that. You miss an event, you want to, hear everything again. I'm going. Always look for that. You can share our YouTube videos of our previous posts as well. And this will be up in the next few hours. If you want to share the word, tell them that you know Terri, definitely do that. And then of course our social media, please follow us. We're just doing so much towards our social media right now. We have so much to share, Whitman facts, historical facts, and of course our poets and our upcoming events. So thank you, Terri, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to stay here so I can read every single one of these posts on the chat that I couldn't read while I was reading. So I love you all. I'm going to check them all. I want to figure out how we can save them maybe, because I want to save them.
I wonder if you could copy paste them. You might be able to.
Sure, my husband will figure this out because,